Good morning, Canada. Thank you for joining us this morning on our Canada Data Experts Unite session. My name is Chris Lawson. I'll be your host today, and I'm very thrilled that all of you have been able to join us today. We've got over 100 people that have logged in for this session so far. We've got dozens joining by the minute, and we're thrilled that you've been able to join today. We've been in Canada now for 2 years. I was actually the first employee in Canada, and the adoption of Snowflake in Canada has been nothing but incredible along the way. I'm very humbled to see the companies that have joined us on this journey and that have succeeded pretty significantly with Snowflake. We've got some pretty amazing people today to walk you through their experiences with both Snowflake, but overall within data. We really didn't design this session today to be a giant Snowflake commercial. This session has been designed for our experts here, our data professionals, to share what they've experienced taking their data to the cloud and overall best practices for managing very interesting and advanced data operations. Danilo, Jeff, and Steve have graciously shared their time in preparing for this session and really are giving you the inside look on their businesses and how they operate data today. What you'll find is that these gentlemen use a variety of technologies along with Snowflake that many of you have today. There's AWS, Azure, Google used in this mix, Tableau, Looker, Fivetran. Some of these technologies will be reflected here in some of the architecture, and we're very excited for this session so that you can see how these companies and these individuals have built out great data operations. Along the way, you're going to have the opportunity to ask them questions, and we're also going to ask you a few questions along the way. We've got a polling feature in this web presentation tool, and we're going to try that right now. Let's see how this works. Okay, so question for you. Have you cut your own hair in quarantine? We'll wait a second here and see the results. Let's see. All right. Maybe I should enter mine. There we go. Wow. That is pretty incredible. 1 in 3 people roughly on this call have had the confidence to cut their own hair. Maybe their partner has cut their own hair. Maybe they just went ahead and shaved the whole thing off, which is a consideration that I have today. But that is pretty incredible. Congratulations. The 71% of you that have not cut your own hair today, your time will come. Okay, so as we were discussing, so the goal of today's session is to really accelerate the Canadian company's adoption of great data technology and really drive data-driven transformation. We've got an opportunity as a country here to share with one another and learn from with one another. We're looking to do some of these sessions in the future, and very excited to show have that experience. And if any of you would like to join one of these sessions in the future, please let us know. So just before we get started, we'd love to understand your relationship with Snowflake. Are you looking at us today? Have you had a experience with Snowflake and you're currently using us and looking to expand? Are you partnering with us? Or are you one of our Snowflake employees on the call today, which we refer to lovingly as snowflakes? So submit. And you can see some quick results there. I think some of the results are still coming in. But it looks like we've got certainly some folks on the call that are looking at Snowflake today and are also customers of Snowflake. So thank you very much for joining us today. Okay, so our agenda. this morning. So first of all, I'll walk you through just a quick 101 on Snowflake so that everyone understands a little bit about the basics of our technology. And then we're going to jump right into our customers, walking through things, starting with Danilo, who is the Director of BI at Wolseley Canada. As we go through each customer presentation, you'll have an opportunity to ask some questions online, and some of those questions will be answered by both the customer and Snowflake. We've got both myself able to answer questions today, and Olivier, who is Olivier Cinquin, who is one of our technical experts based out of Montreal. So you could actually ask the question in French if you'd like as well. So overall, as I mentioned before, Canada has really rapidly adopted Snowflake. I had the good fortune in 2004 being one of the first employees for Salesforce in Canada. I thought I had seen fast adoption of technology then. We're seeing even faster adoption of Snowflake in Canada than what we saw in the early days with Salesforce. Today, we have more than 75 customers of all different sizes that have joined Snowflake. Some of the largest companies in the world, in the country, some of the largest retailers, some of the largest banks, as well as very agile, fast-moving SaaS companies. We have more than 20 systems integrators that have built up practices with Snowflake today that are certified to help our customers deploy. And of course, Snowflake can assist you with that deployment just by virtue of the fact that it is very easy to use. So you've got the option of using our partners and our consultants to help you with that. And of course, you always have the option of doing this yourself, but we do recommend getting a little help along the way. We also offer now local data residency, and that is both hosted on Azure and AWS. You've got the option of using either public cloud, and you have the option down the road of also using Google Canada, and that is on the road map today. Overall, we've had over 10,000 people engage with us at events, on our website, in meetings, and of course, using Snowflake today. Many of our customers have tens to hundreds of users of Snowflake that are accessing that system and building up a large ecosystem of expertise in the country. So thank you very much for everyone who has been on this journey with us. We're certainly very excited to be working with all of you. Now, ultimately, this adoption has happened as a result of the business impact that Snowflake can deliver for businesses today. We are a different architecture. We are a different way of operating your data operations. And that business impact has been really three things. First of all, allowing companies to make better, quicker business decisions, allowing companies to reduce the cost of very large and growing data management analytics operations, and then delivering just a great customer experience with data for your customers, for your users, for your administrators and professionals. We're seeing this business impact even in today's environment, where companies that are in the most impacted industries are still purchasing and moving forward with Snowflake to accelerate their cloud data transformation. We just recently had a company that is a large provider for restaurants. They accelerated their project and moved forward with Snowflake because they needed better data than ever before to understand what was happening in their business. And they certainly needed that data operation to reduce the cost of their incumbent cloud solution. And finally, for their end customers who are using that data, their end restaurants, they needed to provide those restaurants with a great customer experience as well. The business impact that we're seeing is really a result of the fact that what Snowflake is doing is built for today. There were significant problems with data in the past, but that is not what today's problems are with data. In the past, customers were using technology like on-premise enterprise data warehouses. This is Teradata, this is SQL, this is Oracle. Many of you are in those operations today. And while those systems give you very fast answers and a good SQL database for your SQL users to use, it really doesn't handle a lot of different data types, and it certainly doesn't give you the scale and speed and performance for all your different users that you have today, such as hundreds or thousands of BI users, and of course the data scientists that are using up more compute resources than ever before. There was a first-gen cloud data warehouses. These were created in the 90s and early 2000s. They were really taking a lot of that on-premise technology and hosting it in the cloud. Then as things moved on, you had a data lake in the early 2000s with Hadoop. That was really there to address the massive increase in data and the different data types. But unfortunately, it had to give up some of the ease of use and some of the speed that we had seen in some of those earlier technologies. And really, those technologies that many of you are using today, they were built decades ago. Snowflake has the good fortune of being built from scratch for the cloud in 2012, where we had all of the data considerations built in from the beginning. We recognized that customers had far more than structured data. They had semi-structured data that needed to be analyzed very quickly. There were more users than ever before. We talk about BI for the masses. Microsoft has done an incredible job. Tableau has done an incredible job. Looker has done an incredible job taking users or taking BI to the masses and having dozens, hundreds, or thousands of BI users. The data scientists have come around. This is the age of data science. There is tremendous amount of compute power required for those data scientists. Typical solutions in the past have not been able to handle that volume and complexity of compute. And that was something that Snowflake was designed for. But of course, we didn't want to give up the really rapid speed of answers that came from systems like Teradata and other systems. And we certainly didn't want to give up and add the complexity that Hadoop did. And we maintained that everything was built in a SQL database. So just a quick question from the audience here. What are you using today? What's the perspective? How many of you are actually in the cloud today? How many of you are on those traditional software, such as Teradata, Netezza, or Oracle? Give you a second here to pick and hit submit. Okay, I'm going to flip to the next slide and see. Oh, sorry, I have to submit. My apologies. We're using Snowflake. There we go. Okay, interesting. So again, we've got a lot of customers on the call. Some of you are still leveraging some of that traditional on-prem Hadoop data warehouses, leveraging transactional databases to handle some of that. And of course, lots of folks actually have a combination of those. So thank you again for providing a wide, diverse audience. It all comes down to architecture at the end of the day. We have tremendous growth as a company. We've tripled in size just in the last year in terms of the customer base. Every quarter, we're adding 500 new customers. Our renewal rates are 99%. And that's really just architecture at the end of the day. Yes, we put on great webinars. Yes, we have great folks that'll work with you and scope out these projects with you. But ultimately, it comes down to the architecture that was designed less than 8 years ago for our customers. Now, this is where Snowflake sits. On the left, you've got different data sources that come in. You've got your transactional databases. You're streaming data off of different applications. Many of you are using third-party data, such as weather, for example, or census information. You've got different web exhaust coming off of your website, off of your systems, and of course, IoT data. All of that complex data is being loaded essentially into a streaming or ETL platform and going directly into Snowflake. Now, within Snowflake, you've got this one platform essentially that is giving you the operations that were typically provided by multiple technologies or multiple components from a cloud provider. So you've got this concept of a data warehouse, which we are certainly known for. We also can provide a data lake in the same infrastructure. We've got concepts such as data engineering for transformation of data. We have a data exchange, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a moment, which allows you to actually share live data with other companies. We underpin data applications, and we also provide great data science technology within Snowflake. This is all one solution. This is all one solution with one interface, with one monitoring, with one security interface, with one governance model. And that simplicity and automation that exists within this unification of typically separate components is really what is driving that faster, better business decisions, the incredible cost efficiencies, and the experience of our customers. Of course, many of you do know that Snowflake also runs on multiple clouds. There is no one in the world that provides a data platform that runs on multiple clouds. You can host and leverage Google Cloud technology and Snowflake, AWS and Snowflake, Azure and Snowflake, or a combination of both. And by virtue of our design, our multi-tenant architecture, and our multi-cloud architecture, you can actually share data between those clouds or lift up Snowflake and walk it over to another cloud. So this provides you with essentially a cloud unification layer and what we're calling a data cloud, which is a cloud of clouds. Gartner says that over 80% of companies today are on multiple cloud solutions or are moving in that direction. So this is something that is a major differentiator for Snowflake, and again, was designed and built in 2012 when customers were just starting to think about a multi-cloud future. At the end of the day, you've got different data consumers that are leveraging this technology. They are considering how to monetize their data. They're doing reporting, they're doing analysis and analytics. One last piece I'd like to share here before we just start to move into Danilo's presentation is that this technology that was built for today's problem cannot be better exemplified by the fact that Snowflake is delivering live COVID data to all of our customers today. We have this concept of the marketplace. That public data marketplace allows the customer to subscribe to data and have live data within their data operations. So at the moment that Plunge Digital updates a hospital bed capacity rate, at that exact moment in real time, your database, your data models, your data scientists are going to have that live data updated. This is more important than ever before. And this is something that has accelerated the adoption of Snowflake with governments, with retailers and other businesses that are just trying to understand where this whole thing is going. And this is an exciting thing. We will send you updated information on this after the call, but we would encourage you to engage in this data and leverage this data to help directionalize the decisions that you're going to take in these relatively unprecedented times. So going back to the multi-cloud question, just always curious about which cloud you actually, sorry, 1 second. We are, get a different slide here. Just as a clarification, we run on multiple clouds. We've got integrations to basically all of the BI tools that are out there today. We leverage the ETL tools and data science tools, and of course have the consulting services that you require. So we're designed essentially to take this technology that we just described and drop it into your environment. We would like to know, as I mentioned before, what your cloud of choice is here today. And if you could take a moment here, pick your cloud and submit. You'll see those results. Takes a minute to load. I'm starting to. Okay. Well, this is pretty representative of what we've seen in the market. So I did have the good fortune of spending a few years at Microsoft. I can tell you that Canada is very much a Microsoft first company or country, and certainly the numbers are representing that. For the 4.5% of you that are still not in the cloud, unhappy face, we're going to help you. This is our job. Oftentimes, Snowflake is the first technology that is put into the cloud. Okay, so 2 years ago when we launched this business in Canada, this slide said proven by over 500 customers. In 2 years, we've gone from 500 customers to over 3,000 customers, and the number keeps going and going and going. We've got Fortune 6 companies like McKesson that are using us today. And you have software companies like OpenText and Waterloo that are using us today. And you've got SaaS companies like Ritual, like Snap Travel, like Prodigy Games that are using us as well today. And it's incredible the breadth and depth of these companies that are working with us. And let's start and hear from some of those customers today. So as a reminder, you can ask questions within the question and answer box, but I will, and we will answer it. And we'll push some of those questions certainly to Danilo and have him answer some of those questions. But I'd like to introduce you to Danilo Pollock from Wolseley Canada. He is the director of BI there, using Snowflake for about the last year or so. And his fun fact is that he grew up wanting to be a banker. He went to school to be a banker, and now he works and deploys solutions to help sell more plumbing technology. So, and so I should say actual plumbing, right, for your house. So I'll pass things over to Danilo and look forward to the presentation, Danilo.
Thanks, Chris. You threw away my punchline. So hi, everyone. Yep, I'm Danilo Pollock. I'm the Director of Business Intelligence for Wolseley Canada. And I'm happy to walk you through a little bit of our journey today as we've adopted Snowflake into our organization. So hopefully I get this system right and my kids don't interrupt me in the background, but I've kind of kicked them out right now. So let's see how this goes. All right, so I'm going to start today with some of our deadliest pandemics, from the Antonine Plague to the current novel coronavirus. Throughout history, infectious diseases have been an unwanted companion of humans as we've spread across the world. And there's kind of a correlation between pandemics, to say, and Wolseley. So what do we have to do with pandemics? So poor hygiene and lack of proper sewage, they've played a significant factor in the spread of many of these infectious diseases. And one of the most cost-effective strategies for increasing pandemic preparedness is water and sanitization systems. So hand washing, as many have heard, has also been found to be significantly effective in preventing the spread of many of these diseases. And so this is where we come in.
Hey, Danilo, yeah. Can you hear me? Your mic is just a bit fuzzy.
Okay.
I think that already sounds better. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. All right, so Wolseley Canada is part of Ferguson. We're the largest trade distributor of plumbing and heating products, and we're a leading supplier in waterworks, industrial, and building materials. We're publicly traded on the London Stock Exchange with global revenues of over $21 billion. We have over 2,600 employees in 220 branches across Canada, where we provide product to the residential heating, plumbing, and ventilation sectors. We primarily operate in the B2B space, where we serve general contractors and also serve residential consumers through our showrooms and online channel. In the commercial space, we're a national leader in waterworks and specialize in the industrial sector. So from supplying water, creating a comfortable environment, or to wastewater and fire protection, in some way, we're kind of a part of you every single day. So today, what I wanted to kind of walk you through, now that you have an idea who we are, is why we needed to change at Wolseley, how we rebooted our data strategy, and how we're increasing our proficiency with analytics throughout the organization. We're an old industry. We're inundated with urban legends, word of mouth, and gut feelings. And before, we were making critical decisions without any data to support them. There was back of the napkin analysis, no accountability, tracking, or measurement. I joined Wolseley in 2015. There was no data warehouse. We had data all over the place, in Access databases, Excel workbooks, papers on a desk. We were doing well, and things didn't need to be analyzed. But let me show you why that had to change. So here's the Canadian sales trends since 2000. I haven't updated it for 2020 yet, but the reason I'm showing you this is because it's one of our leading macro indicators. As we head into 2016, the housing market was gaining momentum. TV shows all across are demonstrating things on flipping houses, DIY projects, and you or someone you know may have done a DIY to sell your house, which was all great news for us because many of those contractors that you hired bought tubs and faucets from us. So if you still weren't sure who we are, hopefully you have an idea who we are now. So generally we lag 12 months to the market, And for us, this continued through to 2018, where we finished a fiscal year with tremendous optimism. We were throwing parties, popping champagne, and life was great. And in the background, here's these data people analyzing the data and telling our leaders that this honeymoon is coming to an end. So who's going to trust and listen to the data people? Results are fantastic. We actually just finished one of our most successful years. And what do you mean? I need to manage my expenses. Have you seen our sales? And these are all things that are coming across our company. Can you imagine us telling them that this euphoria is over? And everyone has this recency bias. We're all on a high, and history always doesn't tell the future. And that's when it started. A province at a time, day by day, our results started softening. And then week after week, month after month, we saw it coming across the entire country. And you know what they say, someone's always going to poke holes in your data. But it wasn't for our people, it really was, they had to see it before they believed it, unfortunately. And that's kind of where we started to step in and see a little bit of traction. So we wouldn't have been able to provide any of this insight if we weren't able to easily access this information. And we all have data all over the place. Like I mentioned, we had it in Excel, Access, random databases, and we had people relying on this data to make decisions and trust that it was accurate. So how can you use it if it's not organized, updated, and accessible? So let me talk a little bit about how we changed basically our foundation of data. So back in 2015, when I joined on, our BI solution had served as,
Sorry, can you just check your mic again a little bit? I'm not sure the audio.
Oh man. Anything better? Still dropping?
Yeah, I think if it's a little bit better. If you maybe lower your own speaking volume a little bit, that might be better.
Okay, let me just move it away. Is that better?
I think we'll go with it.
All right. Okay, back in 2015, our BI solution had served its purpose, and we could never really look at the entire organization holistically. If you wanted to blend third-party data, do some trend analysis, or never mind even mapping a customer, those weren't even thoughts. Our data was aggregated, and we only updated it once a month. So we were pretty much flying blind from the fourth day of the month to the last day. And there really wasn't any time for analysis because you were really just copying and pasting everything into Excel. So it's actually not just about having data. We had to make this data relatable and easy to digest. And if we look back at that housing market that I showed, there's no way that we would have been ready for the events of 2018 if we didn't make some changes. So let me take you through this journey. So the diagram I'm showing on the slide shows you how we were positioned prior to 2016. We were taking data monthly from our different ERPs, using different queries that were developed before Y2K, and then we would process that data through Access. And because we're using Access, we had to have many Access databases to store this data. So security, all of that stuff becomes an issue. And also we had to have so many of them because there's a 2 gigabyte limit that we had. And if you don't compact and repair, you're pretty much going to lose or crash that database. So after all of this, we would end up creating about 70 different cubes that we would spread across the organization, which housed about 2 years of data, so you can't really do much with it. And then what would end up happening is our users would take that data, copy and paste it into Excel, and this vicious cycle of Excel analytics would start to happen. And we had no visibility if any of those reports or if that data was being used. So clearly this method was not really sustainable for us. So we were growing and acquiring other businesses, and we couldn't analyze any of that data in the deepest level. Data was way too aggregated for us to use, and by the time it was published, we were already 4 days into the new month, where the landscape can change drastically, as we can see recently from the events of COVID-19. We ran a proof of concept to our executive team and showed them the possibilities of changing our business intelligence solution and data practices. So to many, numbers can be intimidating, but when people gain consensus when they see a visualization. And this is especially important when you're trying to shift from an intuition-driven approach to an objective, data-driven culture. We wanted to provide visual insights on any device, including their phone, rather than just spreadsheets getting sent through an email. So it's easier for them to make and execute on decisions. So what we did is we gave them a PDF of the current reports that they used to receive, and then put in front of them a tablet, loaded it with a dashboard that had the same information as the PDF. We also gave on those dashboards some visual elements like charts, maps, bars, lines, etc. And we found that they were able to quickly draw conclusions and where needed to focus versus having to look at a PDF, maybe a spreadsheet, sort that data, and eventually drive to some type of conclusion. And this is before we implemented anything. So eventually we got to go ahead and we started this transformation. We had no idea of what we needed, but we decided to do three things, and we're a small team, so we're a team of 2 at the time. We wanted a data warehouse that took everything from our ERP. We wanted to create a data dictionary and create curated data sources. And we did this because we didn't have time to wait for IT, and we were closer to the business. And eventually in August of 2017, we actually released our first data warehouse on Microsoft Azure. Simple, right? We would gather the data from our sources, and to do this, I kind of connected with IT and bribed them with a few coffees to build out this pipeline, and they basically set it up in a couple of months where we had data coming from our ERPs and directly dropped into an on-premise database, and then we'd push that up to Azure. And so basically we'd store it there, and it was important that it be in raw format so that we wouldn't have to or that they didn't do any transformations, and it kind of created this data swamp, but we wanted everything to be in its original state. And then from here, our team actually reviewed the business logic, so then we could effectively wrangle it, cleanse it, and then govern how we would allow people to consume the data. And then in between, we actually created these curated data sources. So instead of having these 70 different cubes going out to the organization, we created 11 data sources, and they contained all that data that was in cubes, but it had row-level security, so we didn't have to create all of that effort before, and it substantially reduced our work efforts and month-end time that we had to do this stuff in. Then we would store these things in the cloud, which were then on Microsoft Azure, and we would allow people directly to connect to it using Tableau, which is our consumption platform. So initially, these things were going great. We had about 180 users on our system at the time. So we did start to see some concurrency issues and performance problems, especially when we were maxing out our query slots. But we were really limited to where we can go. Our IT team was really comfortable with using Microsoft Azure. We're kind of a Microsoft shop in that case. And it was we didn't have an option really to look anywhere else. But at a Tableau conference in 2018, my goal was to get these connections to be faster. There was no reason why we had such slow query execution. We wanted to get that performance out there because there's no way that we'd be able to kind of push our data agenda through the company if people are constantly coming back and saying, oh, it's taking me too long to run this query. So we decided, or we actually got introduced there to Snowflake. And it was a great sales pitch. It was too good to be true. You're thinking that, okay, great, I'm going to see a reduction in my cost and see exponential increases in my query performance. And yeah, you really wouldn't want that. But I kind of didn't want to ghost Chris at the time. He was kind of persistent sometimes, but we let them run a few demos, make them feel good. And that actually was pretty awesome. My developer also tested a bunch of stuff with our proprietary data, and we were seeing some performance improvements of upwards of 1,000%. And actually, we still didn't trust them at the time, and because they're not as big as a Microsoft or an Amazon. So still, this is 2018, and they didn't have residency in Canada, so a rejection to them would have been really easy. Hey, you guys don't have you're not a resident in Canada, I can't move my data there. Thanks, goodbye. But actually, before we did that, they became resident in Canada. And on October 8th, we made a transition and officially switched off from Azure to Snowflake. And this change in our architecture actually really helped us move our analytics agenda forward, and it eliminated a lot of the cooler talk about how our system was too slow. So to manage costs initially, we were in a warehouse 5 days a week and from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern time. We were on a Gen 2 1500C data warehouse, I think Azure Synapse, and it was slow. We were constantly juggling between resource classes to manage our ETL loads as well as our analytics jobs, and there was a lot of manual work that we had to do to keep our tables in an optimal and efficient state. So when we actually switched in October to Snowflake, we were able to actually increase our availability to 24/7, so people could access the system after 9 p.m. or on a weekend if they wanted to run some work. And then it was actually interesting to see that in the month of October, 38% of our queries that were running through Azure represented 86% of our spend. So in addition, there was little maintenance that we had to do. Our developer could just push the data over and the system was able to, or was using it pretty effectively. And also we do use this feature a lot, is this time travel, because who doesn't like an undo button? Because there's times that we ran into a delete, or we deleted or truncated a table when we shouldn't have. And using that time travel function is awesome because it allows us to go back a few seconds or minutes or however long you set that to. And so overall, we've actually seen an average reduction in our spend by 70% and about 200% plus improvement in our performance. So having this platform is great, but it actually isn't even relevant if it's not being used. So cost savings and performance improvement that we saw and are seeing, they're great and they're helping us along our journey. But we use data in many different ways at Wolseley. We collect data on anything and pretty much everything, but we need to shape our data to tell a story. And it's not until recently that we saw that data was being seen and used as an integral part of our organization, and now it's actually seen as an asset. So when this happened, we saw a drastic change in how our users started interacting and using our data. And today we're not where we want to be, but we definitely are closing the gap of where we should be. So I want to run you through a couple examples of how we started to use our data. And this is something we did even before we were mainstream and seen across the company of what we can do. So we did a couple cool things here. In 2017, there were pretty large wildfires in British Columbia. So on July 6th of 2017, there was a record-breaking wildfire season that began, and by July 7th, so the next day, 26 new fires had started, and that led to a state of emergency in the province. So by September of that same year, there were 158 fires burning over 12,000 square kilometers, and unfortunately, this record the following year was broken again. So in the onset of this episode, we actually worked with our credit and collections team and mapped our customers across in British Columbia, as well as for using open data from the government of BC to track to see where these fires are spreading. And this proactive approach actually allowed us to identify our customers who may be at risk of covering their obligations and then minimized our exposure. Something else we kind of started to do, and after we started getting this buzz, we looked at another project of seeing, okay, how do we optimize our sales force so we can effectively service our customers? And on the map, as an example, these dots show our different that are serviced by a sales rep, and then the colors represent the individual rep. And our managers and reps didn't actually see or have visibility into where their customers were located. So they would take it on wherever they were. And it didn't take that we had customers overlapping, or sales reps overlapping each other's territories. So if I just look at one rep, for instance, we had customers from Ajax over to Milton and all in between, and there's really little chance for them to be able to, or the rep to actually be able to see a customer in that same day. So through analyzing the data and all the customers that were in those target-fees, we created these optimals for our representatives. And now they're able to spend more time with their customers than behind the wheel to get to them. So instead of this rep having to travel to all those areas, they had to define geography that doesn't overlap other reps or representatives. So it seems kind of elementary, but because we didn't have access and visibility more, we weren't able to identify a need for change. So those are cases of ad hoc gigs that we were doing before, and yeah, we're showcasing our sales and capabilities, but it was to a small audience. We weren't even impacting broader organizations just yet, which was completely wrong. We were placing effort to parts of the organization where they weren't impacting our strategy and direction overall. So what we do was tackle a report that was sent out daily to our leaders in the organization. And the idea was that if we started with the most complex things, they probably wouldn't get adoption, but by revamping something that is already used across the company, it would make that transition a little bit easier. So I'm sure showing looks a little bit familiar of you, and it's blurred for the obvious reasons, but it also wasn't clear we should be executing. It was all very manual, took a lot of time and a person to do this stuff. It didn't allow you to interact with it. So we actually transformed the report and made it appealing. It was easier to interact with, or it's easier to interact with and to find information. It's also focused. And there's a reason why focus is important. Studies have shown that companies who have 12 focus areas executed 1 to 2 in the year, whereas companies that had 2 focus areas actually achieved 1.75 out of it. So there's definitely a valued focus. And by creating this different report, or a view of the same report, we actually gave it, or made it easy for people to understand what's going on in the company, and we also made it available to them on their phones or other devices, so they don't have to be sitting in front of their computer to see what's going on. So initially, when we rolled this out, our backend was on Azure, and it was released through subscription, through a link that people could go and access it on demand. However, some days this view could have taken up to 30 minutes to load, depending on how our server was being used. So to overcome this, we actually said, okay, let's copy and paste as an image into an email and just send it out again. But that essentially took away all acting that they could do with it. So thankfully, when we actually switched to Azure, and because it caches the dashboard, it actually loads seconds after the first initial run, which now takes about less than 2 minutes. So this started to change our data culture, and we began creating a self-service to actually democratize all of the data to the company. So kind of in addition to this, we also use our data in different ways as well. We've actually partnered with the University of Toronto to introduce and evolve competencies of artificial intelligence and learning, objective of pretty much positioning the organization to leverage. One of our current projects where AI is being applied is a product recommendation system, which will be integrated with our B2B e-commerce site called Wolseley Express. So you probably have seen something similar to Netflix and Amazon where you see recommended products. And we're looking at it as a way to increase our customer satisfaction, so that ensuring that we've presented them with all the required product they need to finish a job. And to run these projects, they pretty much connect our Snowflake environment where they run any of their algorithms, and they can use our data real time versus using a point in time extract. And in addition to this, we're looking at some of the new data share options that kind of Chris was talking about earlier, that are becoming available through Snowflake. In conclusion, I'm going to bore here our Tableau journey. Data cultures generally have 5 common elements: trust, commitment, talent, sharing, and mindset. So today I kind of covered the ways that we try to address trust, commitment, and mindset. So firstly, from a trust perspective, it came when we built a robust data warehouse that can scale and keep up with the future. For us, that data warehouse is now on Snowflake. We found that if the data warehouse isn't trusted and the data that is in it, it doesn't matter what we put on top, we wouldn't be able to move forward. Next, we needed our commitment. So by positioning this data warehouse for the enterprise, where no one really knew what they wanted, we wanted to create a space where they could kind of become more exploratory and curious with data. We wanted to take something that had a large audience and get them to believe in it. Because if we could build that credibility and tackle an enterprise report, we really could do anything. We wanted to gain the support of our executive team, who hopefully by now see that data is an asset. We chose a visualization tool because numbers can be intimidating, but people gain consensus faster when they see a visualization. And you kind of need to package that data so you can drive the insight. And lastly is mindset. By developing a data-first mindset, but through encouraging experimentation and innovation, we found that when we created these certified curated data sources, it takes away the anxiety from any joins or logic that the end user would have to do, and it allows us to quicker or democratize that data quicker through the organization. Our users are more comfortable and confident in the data they're using while becoming data curious. And that's kind of how we are transforming our data culture at Wolseley Canada.
Thank you, Danilo. That was great. Appreciate the walkthrough of the before and after. I think what we'll do here is we'll jump to Jeff, and Jeff from Ritual can walk through his experience at Ritual. Again, we can answer questions on the Q&A panel there, so feel free to continue to ask those questions. Danilo can actually answer those questions as we go through this, and we can also answer them for you. So Jeff from Ritual is going to join us now. Jeff is the VP of Platform Engineering at Ritual, and his fun fact, I've got a fun fact for you for Jeff, is that he's actually biked across the entire country. And he showed me a blog yesterday that he wrote while he was doing that bike with his friend. And there was one day that he hit 190 kilometers. It sounded like, Jeff, there was a tailwind, but still very, very impressive. So take us through it, Jeff.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, lovely hand-coded website from 2002, but nonetheless. Anyway, hello, everybody. I am here to give you a bit of a view into how Ritual takes a look at their data and walk through kind of the phases that I see through companies in terms of what you need at different stages of life, whether it's startup, going through hypergrowth, and then moving on to more sustainable systems. So for those of you who may not have known Ritual is a mobile pickup app. We are oriented towards in-person pickup as opposed to delivery, really looking to save our customers time by being able to skip the line, and also offer some pretty unique features around being able to pick up for your coworkers and not even have to leave the office, and effectively by proxy get free delivery. It's kind of a social connected or social ordering, I think, is how we typically phrase it. We started in about 2014, been running for a little while. Toronto is our original home. So just diving into a few details about the company, our purpose really is digitizing local commerce and making the interactions that you have day to day, at least the ones you had before COVID, a little more efficient. But the thing that really kind of drives me from a data standpoint is the improvements that we can make to people's lives by saving time and by providing really unique and interesting recommendations. One of the examples I always kind of give is right around the corner from the Ritual headquarters is a sushi restaurant that also happens to have amazing tacos and some of the best French fries in Toronto. If you were searching, you never probably look at a sushi restaurant for that necessarily, right? But these are the kinds of insights and things that we look to power and provide to all of our users. And then on the merchant side as well, the exciting thing for me there is really the level of detail and insights we can provide into their businesses. Whether it's understanding their existing customers, understanding how they churn and how they change, helping restaurants understand like the markets that they're in currently, changing food trends, where they should potentially expand to, if they're looking to expand their start launching new restaurants and whatnot. So a lot of different insights that we can provide. So I kind of mentioned about needing to build data systems for the right phase that you're in. If you're a startup, obviously you've got pretty small needs, small data. Things are relatively simple. Moving on into mid stages, things start to get more complex. If you're going through a hypergrowth phase, which Ritual certainly did, things get really interesting. And then eventually, of course, you end up with moving on to a little more mature systems. So I'll really talk about the hypergrowth phase. This was where, we were fundamentally growing, following that kind of exponential curve. And this for Ritual lasted a significant number of years. And it was very, very interesting time from a data standpoint. Before I kind of dive into why, actually, I'm going to skip around a little bit. The biggest challenge that we had in this hypergrowth phase was that inherently you have a lot of rapid iteration on your product. And from a data standpoint, it's really difficult to understand or predict even how you're going to need to slice and dice your data. The business is changing quickly. The processes are changing quickly. You're adapting to the marketplace. And there's just a massive amount of fundamental change. And if you're not revisiting your processes frequently, then it can get into trouble. So for us, what we did in this phase was really enable, I think, a very ambitious and broad set of analysis in terms of, and what I mean by that is allowing people to slice and dice by a very broad set of dimensions and really kind of query and get at the data in whatever way that they wanted to. We also enabled some pretty broad-based real-time analysis across our data set. And then, of course, providing the typical data warehouse systems, merging data from across a variety of data sources for pretty typical reporting. Giving a bit of a window into kind of some of the necessity and reason for the breadth of this. When you look at some of the real-time analysis, we would run a lot of different promotions. We would need to know at a very fine-grained level within neighborhoods or even like portions of neighborhoods how promotions were progressing. We would use it to spot if there were any issues coming up. We would also use this data to monitor the order flow with merchants. One of the things that surprised me before I had joined, or when I had joined Ritual, was I guess I had this naive view that merchants would self-regulate the amount of orders coming into the restaurant. That if they got too busy, they would just not accept orders and whatnot. But I realized that what ends up happening in reality is that the staff can be instructed just accept orders at whatever, no matter what's kind of going on, right? Because they don't want to lose that revenue. But what ends up happening is really poor experiences for the users, right? So if the restaurant's overloaded, you end up waiting in line anyway. You've kind of missed the whole point of being able to skip the line and have this convenience. So we use that data a lot. Initially, in early days, obviously, this was very manual, but as we matured in our processes, there was a lot more automated systems that went in to deal with understanding how this kind of business flow was working. So a quick view to our initial state systems. We had an operational database and we had an event stream. Both of these would flow through into BigQuery. Ritual's based in Google Cloud. So very heavy users of a lot of the Google Cloud technology, from Cloud SQL for our operational database, using PubSub and Dataflow for our data pipeline, and then BigQuery fundamentally for our data warehouse. So these two kind of streams of data would go in. They would be used both for the near real-time reporting, and then we had Looker for our BI analysis as well. So, and Airflow and dbt in the mix as well in terms of doing some of the transformations on this data to provide the more comprehensive metrics. This system was good and it fit the needs that we had for the time period, but I'm sure many of you who have experience with data are already guessing the moral of the story. And I always knew that this would get very expensive, right? This is something you can afford to do when you're at a mid-sized data set. But as our data grew and as we followed that exponential growth curve, the obvious problems crept in, scaling issues, real-time data across the board can get extremely expensive. It meant no real caching of queries because the data was always changing, pulling in a lot of different disparate data, which would get updated every time you went to query it. So it really got, it started to go up the curve, the exponential curve on cost as well, right? So being well aware of that, it was time to move to the second phase of data, which is really getting into, a more sustainable growth period. So that's really where we need to scale up, and we need to build out these mature systems that are cost efficient and still meet the needs of the business. So for Ritual, what that really meant was the business had matured to a certain degree, right? Key metrics are much better defined, and business process iteration has slowed down in terms of like what and how we actually operate with is more stable, which means process in general around data can solidify a little. That being said, of course, experimentation and data-driven decision making still increases and in fact picks up. There's a very, very, very strong experimentation culture in terms of trying different things out. And as our data systems mature as well, personalization really starts to hit and becomes more impactful. So this time around, what are we building for? We are trying to do our best to represent all of those key metrics, but still provide the ability to have high dimensionality in our reporting. But this is focused towards the data team in terms of they're the ones who can add these dimensions in an efficient way. But that's where we still get a really broad ability to report using our BI tooling and our systems that feed out to merchants as well, based on that kind of information. And from an event for real time, kind of cutting back there to a certain degree, right? It's, as I mentioned, very expensive, but really focusing on more of the event-driven real-time analysis and limiting this in scope to some of the cases I had walked through to customer supports and ops, marketing promotions, and really the experimental analysis. So just being more intelligent about not having to explore the entire data set. We can scope that down to particular areas, and of course, still providing a lot of the in-depth analysis. And of course, being cost efficient, very important in any day. And that was certainly one of our things as the data costs were scaling up. So for us, being Google Cloud based, this is where it was time to do a bit of a proof of concept and explore around and see what we could do. So we looked at a variety of different options, but ended up primarily focusing on Snowflake. I'm sure that's a real shock given that I'm talking to you today at this event. But I wanted to walk you through a little bit of why and what we did. For our proof of concept, we did a couple different phases, but really we took a look at high cost queries, threw the data into Snowflake, and then just did a fairly direct comparison. So to give you a bit of an idea of what these queries were, we identified a couple different things to try to really get a good breadth of scope of what we were dealing with. One of our queries was an inside sales lead query. This query was used to pipe new leads to the inside sales team. It was not an optimal query. It wasn't incredibly well written, to be honest with you. But one of the things that I wanted to get an understanding of when we were looking at this is there is an assumption that we'd all love to assume that we're going to write perfect queries and that all of our analysts and everyone who's using data is going to be, as optimized as possible. But we all know the reality is that's not always going to happen. People will rush. They may write suboptimal queries at times. So we wanted a good sample for what a not well-written query would be like in comparison on BigQuery and on Snowflake, so that we could get an idea of what when people are rushing, kind of like it's a worst case, I guess, a worst case scenario kind of thing. Our second one was key merchant order items information. So we have a bunch of automated jobs to collect information and export it for strategic merchants. And this is a good example of a much more routine insight type query that's providing, key business data to our partners. So that was just a good baseline query item. So we ran this, and there was numerous interesting things that came out of this. First of all, the worst case kind of scenario, we ended up with a 60% cost reduction on the inside sales lead query. And just, I'm not going to go through in depth on some of these raw numbers, but you can see that even the amount of data that was scanned was significantly less to power these queries in both cases, both the inside sales lead. And on the key merchant order item query, we had a 93% cost reduction. That one actually shocked us. So it really depended on the business case, but like, you know, seeing 60 to 93% reductions in cost on these queries is just massive. The other really interesting thing that came out, and I encourage anyone to kind of dive into it, is the micro partitioning that Snowflake does, which is really where I think a lot of the costs comes from, in my opinion, or sort of cost reduction comes from. The ability for them to scan just less data and understand and process a lot less information than what we were used to in BigQuery. Not only does it have an impact on just the raw query cost, but for us in our planning, as we're looking at developer staffing and resourcing, there's actually a reduction in that and an efficiency gain in the team as well, on the basis of not having to spend as much time developing aggregate tables and ETLs on top of some of the raw data, just on the basis of the fact that, you know, that Snowflake itself is capable of isolating down to kind of a more minimum set of data on its own, right? So it's a double win for our team. And this, in effect, enables some of the flexibility that we were looking for in our hypergrowth phase, in that we can still cost efficiently query, you know, non-process data, and not have to have the data team involved in every single query that you know, the broader company is looking to get information about. So what does this look like in kind of the new world? A bit of an updated picture here, where we still have a lot of the same things. We've got our primary database loading in, and we have an enhanced event stream. And so we haven't had, like, in terms of overall building blocks, not a lot has actually fundamentally changed. It was a bit of a lift and shift data warehouse stand transition. Still very much in progress on our side. But just seeing some real huge efficiencies across the board, both in terms of just raw query costs, as well as pure developer time spent on this. The key focus here was really kind of establishing the two paths, the slow lane for more routine, like daily or weekly type analysis, you know, and making sure that that's well established and supported through ETLs. And then the fast lane of the event stream with real-time data that feeds out into any of our operational systems. So that's us, and that's kind of what gets us excited about a more sustainable data system built using, in part, Snowflake. And that is it for me. Thanks, everyone, for hearing me out.
Thank you, Jeff. So what we've got now is we've got a few minutes here where we could do some Q&A. If anyone has any questions here for Jeff, we could take one or two in a live Q&A, and then we'll move on. Oh, we've got a couple here. So we've got a question from Ariel here. Jeff, you may have actually answered this with a micro-partition question for the comment, but right. What is the major root cause behind the significant lower data scans? Just the way Snowflake is built versus BigQuery?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much, but to go into much more detail, if you want to get lower amount of data scanned in BigQuery, you're going to have to be really clever with your partitioning and clustering. So, you know, partitioning by date, pretty common. You can set up clusters based on your other key data subdivisions, but you have to plan that out and make sure that you're doing that pretty carefully. And the other issue in BigQuery is that the more you partition and cluster, the faster you'll start to hit up against their 1,000 tables per query limit, because every partition or cluster means in BigQuery land is a separate table. So for example, if you're partitioning by date, that's 365, that means you can only add like 2 or 3 other clusters on a single table, let alone joining data across multiple tables before you hit that limit in BigQuery. So that means you end up having to do more processing on your data and aggregation, which means an overall slower process across the team. With Snowflake, their micro-partitioning basically does this for you and does not have the same like 1,000 table limit that exists in BigQuery. So it's just a much more efficient flow from developer efficiency and query and data set amount of data that it needs to go through.
Okay, great. Got a question from Yogi. Do you need both Kibana and Looker?
No, I mean, that's kind of a choice on our part. We're using Looker to power a lot of the BI intelligence across the company. Kibana is more on our part for like somewhat more operational, like DevOps type monitoring. It can also power some of the just like direct and immediate metrics for our customer support team as well. But it's not strictly necessary. It's just your choice based on how you need to surface your information.
Okay, great. Question from Melissa. Did you require any third-party data that was readily available in GCP that you lost access to or had to go through extra steps when you migrated over to Snowflake?
That's a good question. I think the biggest thing for us, was we use a variety of partners like most people do, like Salesforce, Braze, Branch, and in our existing setup, all of this data was flowing in to BigQuery. That being said, it was our mechanisms. It was things like Fivetran or Stitch that were doing a lot of that loading of data into BigQuery for us. And in our experience, all those tools generally support Snowflake as well. So it was pretty much as simple as just doing an initial data load, but then reconfiguring the streams of data to also go over to Snowflake. So to your core question, there was nothing specific in GCP or BigQuery that we couldn't also get into Snowflake.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Jeff. So now we're going to shift over to Steve Bentow from PRECIMA. PRECIMA is a pretty incredible data company here in Toronto, most recently acquired by Nielsen, actually, because of their prowess and their technology. Steve is the CTO there and has driven a lot of the transformations that have happened at PRECIMA. And I will pass things over to him to walk through their journey.
Thanks, Chris. Hi, folks. Yes, we're actually called Nielsen-Precipice these days. That acquisition that Chris alluded to happened in January, so it's rather new, and we're still really going through the integration with Nielsen. Precima's history actually starts back almost 11 years ago as a startup idea coming out of Loyalty One. Many people will know Air Miles, but that's the holding company is Loyalty One, and Loyalty One also owned PRECIMA. And so up until, like I said, a very short amount of time ago, we were part of a sister company in with Air Miles. And actually, PRECIMA started as an incubator idea, taking great analytic capabilities that Air Miles had actually built and skills, and bringing that with a focus on bringing consulting services in and around retail analytics, customer focused, loyalty based, strong ability to actually deal with data and actually take that capability and grow it into its own consulting services model. That was the vision. That was the business case for the startup idea. And it started, like I said, about 11 years ago. So some of the leaders that actually joined are still with us. And 11 years later, it's a slightly different looking company. PRECIMA grew ultimately to become a B2B retail analytics company. What I want to do is I'll give you a little bit of the history of that journey, but underplaying that, I'll also talk a little bit about the journey of what technology has happened over those 11 years, so that you get a flavor that we have touched lots of different kind of data technologies. We've leveraged lots of different things over the years. And yes, today we actually do also leverage Snowflake. So I'll give you a bit of that understanding. Many people won't even know about PRECIMA. It's again, it's a brand that only retailers will probably have heard about, and we actually do have a number of competitors. Nielsen was a competitor, now they're our owner. But where we focus on what Nielsen really liked about acquiring PRECIMA is we are a customer-centric organization. We start really at that relationship of understanding of the data that actually is driven right off of cash registers, T-log, we would call it, and it goes really from that engagement of a sale of an item at a retailer, and then we use that information along with other supporting information to build applications that help in retail analytic decision making, to get away from gut decisions on things like the assortment of products that are on the shelf, the prices that are actually going to be set, and today prices are very, very dynamic. Promotions, what should be promoted, shouldn't be promoted, what's worked in promotions in the past, and what should be really actually encouraged and supported in supplier collaborations around additional promotions. Personalization, marketing, direct kind of what can we offer ideas. We have solutions and analytic capabilities. And for the retailers, every category, whether it be a makeup category or whether it be the cereal aisle in a supermarket, there are category managers that are always looking at their category and how they optimize that. So we provide all of those kind of analytic capabilities to support those decision makings at a retailer level. Wrapping around that, we also actually support supplier collaboration. So helping that retailer work with their suppliers on a same version of the truth of that data, same version of the truth of those insights and that analytics, for them to actually work in that collaboration to make great decisions together. Today, I mean, as COVID is actually playing out, it's very much a very, very, very important part of our clients where they're working with their suppliers on supply chain. So that whole enablement of those products is really leveraged through our deep understanding of actually the customer first centric analytics, and it built really our services and solutions into a SaaS platform that is retailer led first. And like I said, this complements where Nielsen was very, very, very strong in working with marketing and actually in supplier collaborations, what we call the CPG market. PRECIMA fits nicely in to actually be that retailer-led first idea that Nielsen was looking for. Who are our customers? Well, as we said, we start really with talking about our retailers. So we have brands such as CVS, H-E-B out of Texas, Staples, US Foods, Loblaws here in Canada, Shoppers inherently from them, HBC, Jumbo out of the Netherlands. These are our core anchor kind of retailers that we work with. But again, in that supplier collaboration model, we have thousands of contractual relationships with all of the suppliers as they are actually engaging and working as well, using the insights of the platform that we build to work with those retailers. So how does the technology make all of that happen? What's it really kind of the underlining pinnings of that stuff? Sort of from a background of what we are, but give a little bit more flavor here, and certainly welcome questions as I discuss this about how are we actually looking at technology to make that all happen for our retailers. Retailers are predominantly, I mean, they're very focused. Their core business is moving that product and being able to actually supply those customers. Traditionally for them, getting great insights to actually be able to drive that is a complex scenario, whether they use a lot of operational systems, historical transactional systems that are supporting their core business and then using insights from that. But ultimately they face challenges as well, bringing that to scale, really fast analytics that actually are able to drive that out. So our platform is built in a tenet of really about activating large data and making that insights in a way that's actually an experience that those retailers and those CPGs collaboratively can actually embed analytics and insights right into the processes and roles that is their core business. Today, we do that. We are 100% a cloud platform. We do that using a lot of our tools and technologies around that we've developed over many years around our architecture, around data management, data services, with a key focus on a common code base today. I'll talk about the idea of a common code base in a few minutes as part of our journey. The focus as well that it has to be a very engaging experience so that it's easy for those users to use. It's insightful and they can actually use it in making their business improvements. And we focus on doing that in a very product management way today so that we can continue to evolve and innovate and deliver that to all of the customers that we're serving. And overall, we've been actually doing well with great satisfaction over the last few years and leading in our client satisfaction surveys. So it has been a journey. At inception, I mentioned we were a consulting organization. We focused a lot about, all right, we win a client. Let's go take our intellectual capital. Let's take all of the great skills that we have as an organization. Let's go and make another like the last one. And we were running in 2015, we found ourselves running with a number of large retailers. We had like solutions independently housed in 2 data centers for redundancy. So we had 2 very large data centers. We used technologies like Netezza as big data appliances. And we did great with all of that. We were actually doing well as a business, but we knew that we had challenges and of actually scale. The market was continuing to evolve. We were finding it took us almost 9 months to order a Netezza appliance and get that into a data center and get things even started for a new client. We knew we needed to get faster. And we also recognized that it was costly for us operationally to have a like and a like and a like, and trying to actually bring innovation to each one of those like implementations, and that we needed to actually revisit. So we call it 2017 a pivot year for us. That's where we went on bended knees to our owners, and we said we need to reinvest in a capital program that's going to give us a capability to look at taking the things that are growing really, really well, but put it into a model that we can scale it, that we have a better experience for our clients, one that's actually going to have product focus for continuous innovation, and a modern architecture in some regard. On a common code base, like a single instance of that code that each of those clients are using, so that when we make an upgrade for one client, all clients can get it effectively. So 2016 through 2018 was our pivot timeframe. Key milestones in there, we by middle of 2018, we achieved all of our migration out of those data centers. We were wholly in the cloud. So we did take a lift and shift kind of approach to get us started with just even getting onto cloud. We picked AWS first. Our parent companies had already had established relationships and benefits of actually being on contract with them on AWS. Moved from Netezza into Redshift. And it made logical sense in 2016 when we were making those choices, and it worked really, really well for us. And we even actually were able to drop our operating costs by just even getting on cloud. So some great successes there. And now over that same period, we focused a lot on our product development teams and built our UX experience, and actually really started reinvesting and rebuilding our platform from what would have been just a very traditional BI focused world to an embedded visualization application experience, and really bringing that through to 2018 to all of our clients. Now, 2018 saw some changes. I'll say if you looked at some of the customers we have some very big grocery customers. We are fighting to get some very big grocery customers as customers. Amazon buying Whole Foods was a bit of a disruptive additional retail experience. And our customers are now saying we don't necessarily want to see our data. And it is a very personal feeling for them and a trust scenario. They don't necessarily always want to see that we're hosting for them their core assets of data on Amazon anymore. So we have actually through 2019 established a multi-cloud strategy, and we are looking to continue to expand on some of our capabilities and functions in our product roadmap. So in our application architecture, we're fairly strong. A lot of it is independent to any cloud. We made some choices along the way there. But things like Redshift is an anchor. It isn't multi-cloud. So certainly for us, Snowflake became a key consideration. We were looking to be multi-cloud, take our core application and be able to instantiate it on any cloud instance. So we've got things like containerization, other things are all working well. Redshift didn't do that for us. So certainly that was a big consideration of why in 2019, we started the program to actually migrate and upgrade all of our underlying data services from Redshift into Snowflake. And today, I can say, quite proud, got some of my team members I know are on the call. We're actually on that path. So we actually have now set up some services, and we actually are doing continued proof of concepts and demos to new clients on Azure. And that's going to be a key consideration for us as well. And Nielsen is 100% an Azure company. So they've actually also invested heavily in Snowflake, in Databricks, and some of the same underlying technologies that PRECIMA use, and made it kind of easy to be acquired by Nielsen. Our architectures are fairly consistent. But we actually today, now we're going to be looking more and more about being able to do it on AWS, but also more and more for our retail clients on Azure as another platform. So give a little flavor of some of the pieces of how we make that happen. I would say it's not overly atypical for a lot of the flows when you're dealing with large data. Even from Emilio and Jeff had shown around how data is flowing for them. We do start with some operational systems, and those really come from the retailers in many cases, but we might pull in market data as well, or we might pull in other competitive information that we might add to and add value to on top of the retailer's data. But we start right at that TLOG, that transactional log, that cash register receipt, all items, all customer information, brought into an environment that we can actually transform that into our standard data model, and then build the services of analytics on top of that. We do have a strong contingent of PhDs. We have a big analytics group, about 25 plus PhDs in our program. We have actually got a deep investment in analytics. And over the years, we've actually built our own Python-based analytic engine that actually is able to spawn out to large scale. But we're also adding in there things like Databricks. So combination in there, being able to land and organize in a standard model, being able to provide that for analytic services such as our modeling engine, our analytics engine, as well as for Databricks services in combination of what Snowflake's in and of itself has, and being able to do that on either cloud that we choose was core to what we were actually building in our platform. And then all of that then is serviced up through the presentation layers and the application services layers of our embedded visualization and application services for price promo assortment, our collaboration programs, and our insights. To sort of recap a little bit, where we found value, I'll say we have found value. I mean, I'll go back and say we've actually had great success even when we were on-prem. But moving to cloud, we've actually been able to find even greater success in our SaaS journey and our B2B product journey. Overall, I mean, we're quite pleased with where we're able to now manage and report at higher levels of scalability, at an item level, transactional level of detail, and be able to drive analytics off of that to bring those insights to our customers. I mentioned even our first step into that journey through 2016, 2018, and on improving our operational costs and savings has been actually a great experience, a great learning to moving out of on-prem and into cloud. But I'll admit, even actually we're finding savings, and while it may not have been our number one criteria for Snowflake, we are finding, I think, Jeff, you said 60%. That was a number because it was interesting. I wrote that down as well. We're finding 60% savings on our just monthly costs versus Redshift. And I mean, we were buying long-term 3-year ROI Redshift instances undedicated just to get value. But we're finding that we're able to run 60% less even with Snowflake, which is great operational value on top of everything that we wanted to do around multi-cloud. I will highlight this journey is not just simply about our data management, but what we've done on our experience as well. We continue to find that we're improving and getting ever better on our experience and our satisfaction. Our net promoter scores with our clients has actually been going up, and we've been very pleased with that. And it is actually very much a platform that we've been building that is about that collaboration. So we're continuing to look about how do we activate that, build those collaboration, not just simply on a web services world, but on mobile as well today. So there's new things that we're actually working with so that retailers can actually work with their suppliers no matter where they are, right, even in a store if they need to. And it is a journey that we've gone through as a business. I'll admit, we weren't always focused on a common code base, a continuous innovation and development, but that journey that we've done over the last few years continues to accelerate our ability to add new customers, to add new features and functionalities, and keep driving out for value. I'll also add that we've all done this with a renewed focus. It took us a while to get there, but moving out of on-prem and moving into cloud and rebuilding entirely new data management processes. We are SOC 2 certified, take 2 all the way, to ensure that make sure we can provide that assurance to our customers that we are protecting our assets. So it's been an interesting journey. I've been 5 years with the company, and quite interesting to see now where it's going to go to in the next few years with a new owner. Chris?
Perfect. Thank you, Steve. That was great. It's incredible to see the journey that you went on, and completely unsurprising that you built a company that Nielsen paid a pretty penny to acquire. So we do have a question for you here from Katie. Katie asks, Steven, can you talk about how Snowflake works with Databricks? Would you say that they're complementary? And what do you think about Databricks' data warehousing capabilities?
Actually, we looked at that. I mean, when we made the case in 2019 to actually do Snowflake, that was joint with doing Snowflake and Databricks at the same time. And they each have specific use cases for us that actually work very, very well. Databricks for our data engineering team has a lot of great functionality for data ingestion, pipelines, even if you would say, of data, and being able to stream those into Snowflake. And we have found that we're able to use Databricks to actually complement Snowflake by that data ingestion workflow. So that was one of the key use cases that was tested out. Additionally, our analytics team have looked at some of the ways that they've actually taken data, and often we will take data into our modeling engine and export it out of a database to put it into our modeling engine. And Databricks actually would be a complementary capability there to support them. So there's been some analytic capabilities that are right into Databricks that our data scientists are very interested in. And Databricks really is a fairly strong science platform for that. Once you have all of that data organized and standardized, where do you take it and how do you make it additional insight? So Databricks has both the data engineering kind of benefits, as well as some cases where we said it would actually add value for our data scientists. Warehousing capabilities, I say our parent Loyalty One uses it for warehousing capabilities. We consider Databricks or just solely that. It didn't meet all of our needs for that. We do use our warehousing to generate an in-memory BI engine for our visualization. So it has a lot of batch services that we use Snowflake for, but it also has some dynamic. So we have some dynamic analytics that are done at SQL level kind of analytics that are done and actually generated on the fly. And the Databricks versus Snowflake, the analytics that were SQL based were better in Snowflake, and it was a better fit for us. And I'll say the journey going from Redshift to Snowflake was also a little bit easier than, say, Redshift to Databricks if we had to perhaps do that one. So there's a couple of considerations there where we kept them both.
Awesome. Thank you, Steve. Other questions for Steve? If anyone would like to add questions into the Q&A, we can answer those. And as well, if there are questions for Jeff or Danilo or the Snowflake folks, feel free to put those questions in there. While we're waiting for those questions, I'd like to share that we have many other resources that are available for you. We are operating virtually, as I know we all are today. And every week you have opportunities to experience Snowflake. You can talk to customers live on Tuesdays, where we always have a coffee chat with our customers. On Wednesdays, you can actually get your hands on keyboard and do a lab with our instructors and actually experience Snowflake and use our trial that's available on snowflake.com. And finally, on Thursdays, you have live demonstrations that are available so you can actually see what everybody has been talking about today. And of course, our team is here to help you as well. You can go to any of those webinars at snowflake.com/webinars, and they will be right there at the top of the page for you. Rayudu asks Steve, what BI tool is being used?
Yeah, well, we've been a long-standing partner with Qlik Technologies. Originally, I'll say in the early years, it was QlikView, which is what we consider our legacy. We moved to Qlik Sense, more for API focused on embedded visualization. Again, we white label. None of our clients really see or use I'll say, out of the box click these days. So we're on Click Sense is the latest generation of that product, and we're using that in embedded visualization that's part of our web layer.
Okay, thank you. And Damien asks, Steve, how did you secure the migration to Snowflake?
Well, I mean, securing it wasn't necessarily, I think, our biggest concern, because, I mean, we are actually using a provider now when you consider providing versus Redshift, say, the Snowflake. So, I mean, we went through all the diligence around looking at SOC 2 reports and everything from, I believe, Chris, you helped me with that, getting all the security assurances of what Snowflake does as a company to protect the assets of that data, since we're using it as a provider. We are running our own virtual instances for every one of our clients. We do an instance of our software for every one of our retailers. And so with Snowflake, we're not doing a shared, any sharing across our clients as well. We have some particular contractual rules that a retailer's data is protected in their own instances. So we do a number of different things there as well with Snowflake to make sure that we are actually subsetting those warehouses. And we're actually making sure that, again, we're going through compliancy checks to make sure that it's meeting all of our expectations of how it's being managed under the covers.
Perfect. Any other questions in the Q&A that would like to be asked of Steve, Jeff, or Danilo? Going once, going twice. Okay, well, thank you everybody for spending the time with us here today. Thank you as well. It looks like we got one more question here. See if anybody would like to answer this. This is a jump ball for everybody on the call. Michelle asks, how would you position Hive versus Snowflake, both in an Azure cloud setup for data warehouse use cases? Anybody want to jump on that? Steve, Jeff, Danilo, experience with Hive?
I'll say our data scientists actually did look at some Spark and Hive kind of considerations early on. Necessarily, we looked at the operating costs of running some of our own, or actually looking at Cloudera and Hive and other things along the way. I would say we chose more to look at a provider-based model. So Snowflake and Databricks operationally became something that was more simpler to use, and operationally wasn't a bigger pull on our organization. So that was, I'll say, where we've had a little bit of look at Hive. It was just more from an operating consideration. We didn't go down that path. Gotcha.
Okay, perfect. Some other questions coming in. I can answer the one for Danilo here on his behalf. Danilo and Wolseley are using Tableau today. Got a question from Loren. Are there Canadian healthcare organizations on Snowflake today? Currently working on our PIA. There are today, Loren. We can connect you with some of them. Some of them are actually using us for gathering COVID data from the different health systems. So we'd be happy to chat with you about that. Lots of requests for sharing the slides. We will be providing out the recording of this for everyone that attended and registered for the event. Okay, well, I think we're going to wrap up because we're just a little bit past 12:30. But thank you everybody for joining us today, and the biggest thanks here for Danilo, Jeff, and Steve for taking the time here, telling your stories, and we greatly appreciate that. If anyone has any follow-up questions, please feel free to connect your friendly neighborhood Snowflake. And everyone, have a great day. Enjoy the week. Get some fresh air, and take care. Thank you.